In the Black Girls with Queen, I wanted to give a shout out to Ring IQ Boxing, and remember to tune in to the motherfucking relay.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
There's a number of people who would love to see Keith Thurman in boots, Ennis, those type of guys. But you told me before we started, you got a message for these younger, up-and-coming fighters at 147. What's that message?
Man, Keith one-time Thurman is not the gatekeeper, okay? And if you want to act like I'm a gatekeeper, then you need to understand that that gate is welded shut, boy. And I will school you just like I schooled Mario Barrios. I'm not those past opponents. I'm a veteran. I'm a fine wine. You can only get me at certain high-level restaurants, baby. This is not McDonald's, but you can still have it your way. If I see a contract, I'll sign the dotted line.
I love it. You must have had a Red Bull before we did this.
Now, there may be some who still find Keith Thurman's banter charming and witty. There may be some who still find Keith Thurman somewhat charismatic after all these years. But I am not among them. I'm not one of those people. And
for me, it's nauseating.
This is the second or third time I've heard Keith Thurman assert that he is not a gatekeeper, that he is not a stepping stool for this next wave of welterweights and unbeaten up-and-comers. But there really is only one way to prove that, and that's in the ring. To assert your dominance and show those young up-and-comers, those unbeaten up-and-comers, and the boxing community at large that you've still got it, that you're not cannon fodder,
That you're not ripe for the picking.
there are a lot of people that don't blame Keith Thurman at this stage of his career for being selective, but what stage is this exactly? He only has one professional loss, and that's to Manny Pacquiao 2 years ago. He has since gotten himself back in the winner's bracket.
Spence and Crawford are busy with each other.
Keith Thurman was tabbed as a potential opponent for the UK's own Conor Benn, but we now know that's not going to happen because Conor's fighting Chris Eubank Jr.
Brian Custer mentioned the name of Jaron Boots Ennis.
And here's the thing. I was never expecting Keith Thurman to take on Conor Benn. I was never expecting that to happen. But it just so happens that Jaron Boots Ennis fights on a PBC-affiliated network, a PBC platform, even if he himself isn't a PBC fighter. He does fight on Showtime, and he fights on Showtime exclusively. So it's really on Showtime to get that fight over the line, to get that fight done, because they are invested in Jaron Boots Ennis.
Keith Thurman wants to give you a hard time. You tell that guy, you're going to take this fight or you're going to hit the road.
Because we ain't got nothing else for you. If what you think you're going to do is sit on your hands hanging around doing nothing, waiting for a seven-figure purse, a seven-figure payday to show up,
We ain't got no Mario Barrios fights for you. What we do have is Jaron Boots Ennis.
we've got Jaron Boots Ennis, we've got Rashidi Ellis. That's what we got. And you being a former champion and a familiar face, a familiar fighter,
Keith Thurman does have more of a profile than they do.
I mean, unless things fall apart with Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr., you're not about to fight for a title. So, you got to keep busy with somebody. What do you want to do? You want to sit out the rest of 2022? You want to sit out the rest of the year? Beating your chest, telling people you're not a gatekeeper when you don't want to climb in the ring with none of these guys? Is that your plan?
There's only one way to show people that you're not a gatekeeper, and it's not doing interviews repeating yourself.
Personally, I think Stefan Espinosa and the people over there at Showtime need to put the pressure on Keith, put the squeeze on that guy to get in the ring with one of these guys or hit the fucking road.
Keith Thurman's last fight was billed as a Fox pay-per-view.
I don't actually think Keith Thurman's boxed on the Showtime platform in some years. So if I'm Stefan Espinosa and the people over there at Showtime, I keep it that way until Keith Thurman finds his balls, finds his moxie, and decides to get in the ring with some of these unbeaten young up-and-comers like Rashidi Ellis, like Jaron Boots Ennis. Otherwise, hey, go over there to Fox and see what they can do for you. Because we ain't got nothing for you over here but smoke.
It's that simple. You're going to have to earn your money, sweetheart.
Otherwise, you can take the rest of the year off and see what that does for your buzz, your marquee value. Take the rest of the year off and see what that does for your career.
One-time Thurman, more like once upon a time Thurman.
In men's heavyweight news, on the heels of his latest loss to Alexander Usyk, Anthony Joshua stated on his anger after the Usyk defeat, "It's been tough. You see AJ holding it together. It comes at a cost, a big cost. It will never break me, but it takes real strength. Tonight, there was a crack in that armor because I took a loss. You saw me upset.
And that's how I interpreted all of that. That's what that was. The guy was angry, he took a loss. I will admit that it was awkward, and it certainly wasn't AJ's finest moment, but I've seen worse. And I talked about that in my previous video. Wait a minute, weren't they just criticizing this guy before this fight, saying that he's too gracious in defeat?
I vaguely recall Teddy Atlas doing a whole video about it, talking about how AJ, he's too gracious in defeat. He's too much of a good loser. So much so, people were starting to question if he wanted to win, if he wanted to win at all.
Anthony Joshua can't win with some people.
They were literally saying the guy's too nice, that he's too gracious in defeat after the first loss to Alexander Usyk. He loses it after the second loss, and now they're giving him shtick about that.
Listen, I can't get too caught up in what other people think. I can only tell you what I think.
And if you want to know what I think, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do. Anthony Joshua's fit of rage after the fight, what it shows, what it displays, is that he's still passionate and he still cares, that he still has ambition, that he still has fire in the belly. So while it wasn't his finest moment, it is encouraging.
That he's not completely disillusioned, that it's still something he's working towards, so much so that he lost his cool.
And it didn't take him very long to collect himself, but naturally, whenever something's going on with Anthony Joshua, you're going to get a pocket of individuals waiting to lambast him. Most of them, Tyson Fury fans, resentful that Anthony Joshua was crowned the UK's golden boy instead of Fury.
What do you expect? Tyson Fury made a bunch of anti-Semitic and homophobic statements.
And in effect, he made himself a social pariah. He put on a stinker with Vladimir Klitschko. At that time was Tyson Fury's finest moment, his finest hour, in a fight that really did fail to entertain. For me and my money, it was one of the worst heavyweight fights I've ever seen. And I've seldom ever seen it since.
Who the fuck goes back to watch Fury versus Klitschko?
Nobody. Most of the people you see taking shots at Anthony Joshua, these people they're Fury fans. And they're resentful that Tyson Fury didn't get the warm reception in previous years that Anthony Joshua got, but what they don't factor into the equation is that Fury made himself a social pariah with certain comments that he made and certain performances. Or maybe they do factor those comments into the equation, but they're sympathizers and they actually agree with Tyson Fury's anti-Semitism and his homophobia.
I remember way back in 2015, 2016, he got a lot of heat for that stuff.
He was a social pariah in those days, and that's why, in spite of beating the man to be the man, he was never widely accepted. That in tandem with a very lackluster showing, a very lackluster performance. Yes, you beat Vladimir Klitschko in one of the worst heavyweight fights most fight fans ever saw.
You let Fury's fans tell it, and it was some kind of fucking masterclass. Two guys that size throwing about 2 punches around.
Getting tangled in each other's arms like so many loose socks in a laundry.
It was a god-awful fucking fight to watch, let me tell you.
But I mean, this is why they resent Anthony Joshua so much and take every opportunity to take shots at him whilst turning a blind eye to Tyson Fury's shortcomings, that he may very well have an unbeaten record, though it wasn't without some angling and some opportunism. Eddie Hearn very recently chimed in.
This is a guy in Tyson Fury, right, who openly says he's had all these mental health problems, struggles, stuff like that. You see a guy up there crying, like as big and strong as AJ, who for years has put on a brave face. And tonight, like he said, you just saw chinks in the armour. So if you want to see a guy that's been through this mental health experience and goading someone when they're down and when they're devastated, that shows you the kind of man he is. Whatever you think of Anthony Joshua, even if you don't rate him, he's a top 5 heavyweight in the world.
Given Tyson Fury's behaviors over the years and his admission that he supposedly battles mental health issues every day, that he's been battling mental health issues for some years, those mental health issues have come under question given his behaviors. Eddie Hearn raises a very valid point that for a guy who's been down in the dumps before and contemplated suicide, it's strange that he would take as many opportunities to put people down. AJ in this instance. It's strange that someone who has these issues would take this many opportunities.
It's strange that he would be the one to kick a man when he's down.
Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I do think there is something wrong with Tyson Fury, and what that is specifically, I'm not sure. I'm not a fucking doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist, but the disconnect is that because Tyson Fury might actually have a mental illness, that it's a get-out-of-jail-free card, that he's not culpable, that he's not responsible for what he does, he's not responsible for the words that come out of his mouth. When he's lucid enough to cash a check, he's lucid enough to compete as a pugilist, so how is he not lucid enough to be responsible?
No fucking accountability.
I said it before and I'll say it again. He didn't retire after the Klitschko fight because of fucking mental illness. The timing of all of this was impeccable. He decides to chuck the belt, throw him in the air, retire from the sport for 2.5 years at a time when he's being investigated by UCAD for the nandrolone found in his system.
And don't forget, he was waiting for Vladimir Klitschko's rematch clause to expire as well.
Way back when? 2015, 2016? I didn't believe that Tyson Fury actually injured his ankle when that rematch was delayed. And when he walked away with this mentally unfit stuff, I didn't buy that either.
I felt and still feel he thought Vladimir was going to beat him, and he did everything he could to get out of that rematch.
Maybe there isn't nothing wrong with Tyson Fury psychologically. Maybe there is. In any event, it does seem like a gimmick. It does seem like an issue that he is so misappropriating to get out of responsibility, culpability, accountability.
Ah, look at me. My head's a bag of cats. I'm not responsible for nothing.
Whilst taking shots at his contemporaries, essentially kicking a man when he's down, simultaneously beating the drum for mental health and attempting to raise awareness for it. In truth, all I see in Tyson Fury is a guy who made himself a social pariah in his own neck of the woods years ago and thought he could come to America and reinvent himself because the Americans,
They weren't keeping up with heavyweight boxing much in those days anyway when he made those inflammatory comments.
some time had passed and the heavyweight division, it started to heat up with the rise of Anthony Joshua, the meteoric rise, the rivalry with Deontay Wilder. It was a very opportune time for Tyson Fury to reintegrate himself into the heavyweight division, being based out of America and turning his back on the United Kingdom, which is what he said. He said it himself.
When he came back, he was a more PC, PG, user-friendly Tyson Fury.
Now, I'm not telling you that Tyson Fury needs to put the kid gloves on whenever he's talking about Anthony Joshua or any of his other contemporaries. I'm not telling you that. I expect Tyson Fury to behave the way he's behaving because I think he's a con man.
So he's bipolar, bilingual, bicycle, whatever.
No, I'm not telling you he needs to be more nice to Anthony Joshua so much as when he behaves the way that he behaves, he's accountable. He's responsible.
Because a true mental health advocate wouldn't kick a man when he's down.
A lot of Tyson Fury's fans are going to point to Anthony Joshua some years ago telling Tyson Fury to get fit, you fat fuck. But the part they're leaving out is that while Tyson Fury was away, he kept taking shots at Anthony Joshua, calling him a paper champion.
He didn't say that for no reason. Tyson Fury brought that on himself.
It wasn't an unprovoked attack. Tyson Fury was taking shots at Anthony Joshua then. He's still taking shots at Anthony Joshua now. So the idea that he's this mental health advocate.
The whole thing's a fucking con job.
And just in keeping with the theme of heavyweight news, because Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder are no longer in world title contention, to some, it may seem like the most opportune time to finally do the fight between them. The usual suspects have already started uploading their videos, their pro-Wilder propaganda, to talk up an Anthony Joshua fight, a fight that he walked away from once before, twice before, thrice before. I lost count. But a fight that didn't happen before, and a fight that I don't expect to happen now. In fact, I maintain my original position that I wouldn't be at all surprised if those two guys never fight, because the platform issues and political issues that were there before, they are still there now. You might have heard me already say that. You have to think about what happens after Usyk versus Fury. Presumably the very next title fight we're going to see in the heavyweight division, and what happens
when a winner emerges? If Tyson Fury beats Alexander Usyk,
if they make that fight and Tyson Fury wins that fight. I could see Tyson Fury affording Anthony Joshua a shot at the undisputed heavyweight crown. I could see that happening because that would still be a fight that's worth a lot of fucking money. And by that time, Anthony Joshua may have gotten himself back in the winner's bracket. I have faith that he can still...
He can rebound. There's still a lot of fights out there for him. And a lot of those fights, in fact, most of those fights, are winnable fights.
You anticipate that both Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua can get themselves back in the winner's bracket before this year is out, and that the undisputed heavyweight title fight, maybe it goes down later on this year or early next year when a winner emerges. If Tyson Fury is the winner, I could see Tyson Fury affording Anthony Joshua a shot at the undisputed crown because he's already fought Wilder 3 times. The only other fight out there for him worth any kind of money would be a Joshua fight, and Joshua may have won 2, maybe even 3 fights by that time. There's that to consider. And if Usyk wins the Fury fight, if he becomes this division's undisputed champion, I don't think Usyk sticks around much longer. I think Usyk knows underneath it all, he's not cut out for a sustained campaign as a heavyweight because he's not a natural heavyweight.
I think if Usyk becomes this division's undisputed champion, he'll retire afterwards.
I think he might. He made very good money winning the World Boxing Super Series at Cruiserweight. The money he made with Tony Bellew, the money he made with Derek Chisora, the 2 Joshua fights, the 2 Joshua paydays. Having achieved that goal, I don't think Usyk would stick around. He'd retire, at which point the belts would go vacant and they'll be redistributed. Perhaps Deontay Wilder picks up one and Anthony Joshua as well, which would make Anthony Joshua a 3-time heavyweight world champion.
In a scenario like that, interest in the fight would be rekindled, would be renewed, if both Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder become champions again.
We're talking about a year and a half, maybe 2 years from now. That is what we're talking about, the ways both these guys might see themselves picking up alphabet titles again. And interest would be renewed seeing both these guys become champions, but the problem is the platform issues and political issues would still be there, would still be in play. What prevented the fight from happening before, it hasn't gone away. It's still there now.
Deontay Wilder says he's got another 4 years left in him.
That's what he says. Eddie Hearn said he tried to reach out to Shelly Finkel to open up a dialogue in reference to this fight, but he got no response.
That's not surprising. Shelly Finkel name drops Anthony Joshua, says the fight between him and Wilder is still a big fight, win or lose.
That was ahead of the Usyk rematch, at which point Eddie Hearn tries to get in contact with this guy, and he can't reach him.
That's not surprising. It's 2018 all over again.
They're playing phone tag, and you can expect more of the back-and-forth action between the two teams, more of the back-and-forth action between the two sets of fans in the weeks and months to come.
But no, I'm not actually expecting a fight because Anthony Joshua boxes exclusively on DAZN.
And Deontay Wilder's not going to go over there. He wouldn't go over there for undisputed, for $100 million guaranteed. I'm not sure that you can convince him now, but that's not going to stop them from name-dropping Anthony Joshua and talking about the fight. That's not going to stop them from doing that.
Nah, Shelly Finkel was talking about Joshua versus Wilder ahead of Joshua versus Usyk too.
Like I said, we're back at square one, or we would be, if that's what all of this devolves into. We will have gotten nowhere since 2018. We'll have gotten nowhere in 4 years' time.
This is a scenario where Usyk wins, retires, and vacates the belt.
The alternative to that is Fury winning, becoming this division's undisputed champion, and sticking around for just one more fight with his domestic rival who he's got no shortage of nice things to say about.
If Fury wins, maybe he fights Joshua.